All right, we're on.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm not quite sure exactly how we start the whole thing. That's part of the introduction, because we go from the title page and then we describe the vulnerable population. So with what I was thinking, and you guys can correct me, of course, at any time. I was thinking, let me get to the PowerPoint that I have up here. And you can change any of these pictures too. That first one, I was just thinking, you know, there's a whole bunch of different ages of kids there and they look vulnerable. So we can change that, whatever you want to do. But the second one, when we're talking about the vulnerable population, you want me to just read to you what I was thinking of saying, or having, or at least why I came up with those bullets?
Yeah.
Is that fine?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was going to say, according to Aday's model of vulnerability, there are many indications that this population is included as one that is at risk. Social status refers to age, gender, race, and ethnicity. Social capital refers to social networks. And populations at risk defines higher versus lower risk categories. Because of their age, psychosocial development stage, and vulnerability towards marketing, this population is considered a high-risk population, and the tobacco companies are well aware of this vulnerability. The population is comprised of impressionable children and adolescents. It is defined by Erickson as the identity versus role confusion stage of psychosocial development. They are vulnerable to outside influences that shape who they see themselves as now and in their future. Young people and adolescents obviously do not always act in ways that serve their own best interests. They can be prompted to make poor decisions that can put them at risk and leave them vulnerable to physical or psychological harm that may have a negative impact on their long-term health. If we are to serve and protect them, we must have a full appreciation of those environmental influences, as well as society's opportunities to shape them, good or bad. Is that way too much for the first? Because it can be up to 25 minutes, and I don't want to be overly wordy because that's kind of in my nature.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Okay, I think it sounds really good.
Okay, so bringing up Erickson is fine, and
oh yeah,
because she said we have to prove.
Yeah, we need to cite Erickson though. So do you have that cited in there somewhere? I mean, this obviously.
I have to, right. I'm going to have to put that somewhere, because actually I just remembered.
Yeah, and no, that's cool.
Psychosocial development that was, and then I looked it up to make sure I was writing it right, but that was called Wikipedia or one of those that just popped up first. So I'll find something.
So I am going to just put a comment in so we don't forget to cite it, because my biggest paranoia in life is not citing something.
Right.
Wait till you get to your paper.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I just got my charter back. I got a lot of work to do before I can turn in the next part. So, okay, and then the theoretical support. I was kind of working on that one. I said Healthy People 2020 defines health equity as the attainment of the highest level of health for all people. And I need to write that, my little thingy there, because that is in the references down at the bottom. Healthy People 2020. And I'm not sure exactly how to cite that yet, but I'll get back to that. Get on Purdue OWL and all that and remember, because it said to cite a website, you put the title. If you don't have an author, you put the title of the page, which was just called Disparities. So do I want to put in the parentheses there disparities?
So the way that I usually cite the website is sort of the if there's a group that makes the website, I do that. If there's not a group that makes the website, I do. Is this for Healthy People 2020? Is that what we're talking about right now?
Yes, but it was cited on the healthypeople.gov site.
So that there is a like group that does that .gov, and I usually can see it at the bottom of the page.
Well, actually, it was retrieved from www.healthypeople.gov/2020/about/found health measures/disparities. So it actually was the healthypeople.gov site.
Yeah, so that's actually it's managed by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So it actually, the author would be U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The date is the site when the site was last updated, and then the title is
Go change it.
disparities. Yeah.
Okay,
And
but
then
if it's a
retreat from.
website, where do I put? I put the title after the date, as
Yeah,
if
you
it's a
put-
journal article.
As if it's a journal article, you put the title after the date, and then you say
In
retrieved from, and then the website.
Right.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay, then that's not in alphabetical order anymore.
that's all right.
So I'm going to cut it. QRSTU. So it'll be last.
I have a question about the theoretical support. Are we supposed to include like things from what we've actually read in our chapters to support in this area? Because the only thing
That's what I did.
I'm kind of concerned. Okay. I just don't want to get like, I mean, I know nurse power is awesome, but you know, maybe a little, I don't know how to say it.
That's actually from the chapter.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. That's why I have the author. Well, actually, they're the editors, and then the date, and then the page number.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's actually straight from the book.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm just fixing that now. Okay, do you want me to go ahead and keep reading what I have for those, and then you guys can just tell me for each one what to take out?
Sure. Are we supposed to be looking at the chapters that we read and figuring out which ones apply, or do you think we should apply all of the chapters to this, or is it?
I don't know, because I only read 5 and 6, so I don't know about the others. But
yeah, I mean that's what I'm sort of wondering.
Wonder if we can all just give maybe a brief, like, synopsis of what our chapters are about, so we, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible because there's only so much room that we have in these slides, and you know, some of those chapters have so much theoretical stuff in them to be the nice way to put it. I just think we need to put what pertains to our project.
Right.
I don't think we have to make a slide to summarize each chapter. I think it's more, I want to know what's in the chapters you guys read so that I can understand parts of the book and know what applies. Yeah. So like, that's where I'm sort of at right now, is like, what's out there? What do we actually use as our framework for supporting this? Because the way I read the assignment, it's like, pick a framework and go from there type thing. I could be wrong.
I kind of feel the same way, is kind of discuss what we read so we know what actually applies the best to our social justice issue.
On like the policy solution, she said, you know, you can use one of the frameworks that I'm talking about, or you can use one of the ones that was discussed in the book. But, you know, like the one I used actually really applied well to the part that I did on theory. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think she just wants us to make sure we're using some kind of theory somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, so like my chapter 2 was about Parisia, which is like fearless speech, and talking about like speaking truth, like telling truth, frank speech, saying it even when it's not like the, even when it's sort of risky, and you're rejecting rhetoric, and you're disrupting like established practices that are out there. So the way that I was thinking about that as it relates to teenagers and tobacco use is sort of, you know, saying, you know, if we're looking at our policy packet, I mean, you know, like this is happening. Like this is, they're marketing directly to our children. Like that to me is, it's risky. It's saying, it's saying it straight out. Like this is not, we're not beating around the bush. We're saying, and that's Parisia, which to me took something from the book to then connect it into there. So, yeah, I don't know, and maybe I'm not looking at this right, but just being true to yourself and saying like this is a problem, and I don't know. My other chapter was talking about promoting social justice and equity by practicing nursing to address structural inequities and structural violence. So really looking at the structures behind why there are inequities. So the way I would relate that to, sorry, one moment.
Charlie just turned on a electric razor.
Go upstairs, please. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. We're very needy right now. So the way I would relate that to our project is like if we were talking about the social injustice, so how do we look at the structures that brought the social inequity there? So looking at it's about looking at not that teens are making bad choices, it's that the structures in their lives are contributing to their reasons for using tobacco. So it's not like solely about them and their individual proxy. It's about the fact that their structural peer group is pointing them in this direction. The lack of support in school or wherever, or maybe the way that education is presented, or how have you. I guess that's what I got from my chapters. Right or wrong?
No, I like that. There was a part on mine that talked about justice theories. Mm-hmm. And one person in particular was talking about, they used, I don't actually know who this person is, but they have like a comparative theory for justice, and that in order for you to prevail in resolving these injustices, you have to deal with each one on an individual specific level. So like what they talked about was lack of access to care, for example. Like you have to take each point and resolve it, which I feel like we're kind of trying to do, because obviously every issue, I mean, we're not going to have world peace, world health, blah, blah, blah. That's just never going to be a thing. And same thing with what we're dealing with now. Like you have to take each piece of the marketing towards our kids, plus the education piece, plus all the little pieces that tie in. You have to deal with each on an individual level to actually be successful and have some kind of positive outcome. I thought that was interesting. I had another part of one of my chapters talked about how nursing has kind of shifted from this community involvement educator to solely acute care in the hospital. And our patients are suffering because nobody's educating in the community, which is actually where people live. Most people don't live in the hospital. If you're in the hospital, it's, for one small acute event or later in life, if, you haven't maybe cared for yourself, or, the different injustices have actually finally culminated to one big thing, and you're now in acute care. And I think that's interesting for the tobacco issue, is bringing, the education piece or something back into our community, into our schools, to help resolve the problem at a community level, and not once it's become this gigantic monster that we're having to fix because it's led to other things such as lung cancer, COPD, heart disease, the list goes on and on. So.
Yeah.
I think my chapters were a lot more philosophical than that. They didn't have, they just were. She talked about a safe haven and impermeable, I think that's what it was called, boundaries, and how, we don't feel we have those boundaries anymore. So that safe place, it was a lot more theoretical and not quite as concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking more along the lines of our responsibility to protect the vulnerable population.
Mhm.
And then the chapter 6, I believe, it was even talking about Trojan horses and, you know, things that insidiously work their way in, and we allow that, which I think could fit the tobacco industry. So, you know, I was, you know, jumping on that tangent. We have no excuse. Don't let them fool us into allowing this Trojan horse into our children's minds or safe place or boundary or whatever, because that chapter was so.
Mhm.
I like that though, because there's that piece, like you said, Tamara, about you know, protecting them, but also, you know, providing the education and the tools, I guess you could say, to make it so they can fight off these quote Trojan horses, you know, like these things that are
Right, or not be fooled.
Right. I mean, as much as you want to protect.
Because the marketing is what the Trojan horse is. It's convincing that, you know, the candy flavors and the pretty colors, and they're very susceptible to that because of their stage of life.
Right.
I think though
but that's not a theoretical framework.
No, but it's based on what you read in your. It doesn't have to be a theoretical framework that is defined by someone. It's using theory that we're learning from this book to apply it to social justice. You know, I think that the one thing I would caution about when talking about protecting this vulnerable population is sort of going to a very paternalistic place where we are like the guardians. And I guess with children that sounds bad because we really are their guardians, but at the same time, you know, one of my chapters talked about sort of post-colonial perspectives and looking at how, you know, when one group comes in and says you're vulnerable and how that doesn't actually like lift that group up. Again, kids are they're not on the same level as adults, but if we want them to be making decisions that are, you know, if we want to value their decision-making process in the education that we provide, and make sure that we're not sort of like this, you know, big brother looking over them, or
so on that
big
value thing, as far as my chapter 4 goes, it talks about biopower. I don't know if anybody read my notes or not, about having power over one another, and that nurses actually end up using that power. And we use that power in regards to people's social status, and so how we treat people. And we all do it, whether we want to admit it or not. But like the worse that a person's treated, the less power they have, and they can actually be more subjected to violence or death or whatever, just because of the power situation. It's the power struggles. And so, like, you know, I guess relating to smoking, you know, with these kids, we don't need to, I guess, strip them of their power, I guess you could say, and, you know, bully them in a way that they're not, I don't know, that we bulldoze them over and then they don't have any respect for what we say or whatever. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm still thinking though the tobacco companies, for some reason. So I need to get off that, right? We're not doing the HR 1256 or whatever it was called, right?
Well, I think oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's two parts to it. I mean, because essentially we are the adults in this scenario as far as being parents. I think there's that responsibility to set your kids up for success. And, you know, even if you aren't a parent, like set children up for success, but at the same time, you're empowering them by educating them. So I think it's twofold, because, you know, we have to make the tobacco companies responsible for what they're doing, which is misleading the kids. But then at the same time, we're investing in our kids by teaching them, you know, solid foundations on how to make wise choices, essentially. But But at the same time, like Kristen says, not being, I think there's this new idea that we shelter our kids so much now that once they get out on their own, they can't handle it.
Well, I don't know if anyone looked at any of the articles that I had sent along, but
I did.
I did.
Yeah.
I used one of them on the slides.
Yeah. But I think that the first one that talks about how parent-based education it doesn't really have doesn't work with respect to substance use. Not saying parents don't teach anything, just I guess that sort of speaks to that. Maybe going from a power
That one got my
differential is
gander
not
up.
the way.
That one got my blood pressure up.
I know. I'm just saying. I sent it and I was like, oh. But no. But I think that sort of speaks to the fact that when you're looking at this age group, you're dealing with children, but you're also dealing with budding adults. And they want to be respected for their growing autonomy. And and then in the third article, there was something about like a video game platform. That was something that was geared directly towards them, was not coming from a power place. It was something that was like circling them into an environment that they were already in. So again, honoring their autonomy and meeting them where they were. But yeah. Sorry, I'm like becoming aphasic right now. I'm going to eat some macaroni and cheese. Maybe that will help me out.
Carbs. It always works.
I know. Seriously. I know. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so what is all this telling us about what we're doing on these slides?
So
I guess
yeah.
Go ahead. I guess it just depends on what you want to make your final, what's it called? Solution.
The theoretical, the solution.
Like whatever you just, like if we want to pick two different, like with the two different solutions.
Well, for right now, I have education as one, and the labeling.
And I actually think those are great. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's looked at them, but
yeah,
I updated them last night.
Yeah. I think education as one and labeling as another is perfect. And I think that, sort of, we just need to look at the type of education we do, what type of framework are we looking at from there? Are we looking, and what are we supporting that with? And then the labeling, again, what type of framework are we supporting that from? And I liked the idea of the Trojan horse as, sort of the marketing as being like sort of like that, the way that it's sneaking in. Rachel, you had said something about marketing too, and I can't remember.
I forgot.
I took notes, and the notes aren't helping me right now.
Well, I don't know. I lost the idea. I'm sorry.
I did the social determinants of health theory, which has like the government level, the social relationships level, like what is my friends doing, the individual risk factor shells, should teenagers vulnerable smoke. I don't know if y'all read that. I mean, we don't have to use one out of the book. We can use one on the thing. So, I mean, I can redo it or leave it like it is. And then disease is, the ultimate is determined by genetic, and that's like one of the next to last shells. So, which is really why we don't want them to smoke, is the disease factor. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Trojan plays into the disease factor or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to look at like everything. So,
Yeah.
I'll do it. But it explains like, the teenage, peer pressure and, the government needs to do something about it and, social relationships. And so I don't know. I mean, we can do
And
whatever.
when we talk about their peer pressure, do we also talk about how that is structurally part of what makes them vulnerable? I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
Where would that go?
I'm not sure.
That would go in the social relationships level.
Yeah.
Right, but not under solution. We would be talking about that up under social justice or under the theoretical support, or
That would be
under the vulnerable population.
maybe that's under vulnerable population.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of said they can be prompted to make poor decisions that can put them at risk and leave them vulnerable to physical or psychological harm, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't really say peers.
We
know that's what you meant.
Yeah, we know that's what you mean for sure. The question is, will Dr. Baker know that's what we meant? I don't know. That's the $1 million question.
Well, thanks, guys. I was the only person that showed up Tuesday night, and I look like a total dork.
So sorry.
She and she recorded it, of course. And I'm such a dork. I hate it when she records. But anyway, okay, she had said, under epidemiology, we have to make sure that we are showing the rates of adolescents initiating smoking is higher than older people. That's what makes them the vulnerable population. So I I just switched some of the, like I put at the top, the average age of the new smoker is 13. Because obviously there's more initiation of smoking under the age of 18 or 21, whatever you want to call adult, if the average age of the new smoker is 13, and 9 out of 10 smokers began before the age of 18. So I feel like that justifies the fact that it is, that the rates are much higher in kids.
Yes,
because we have
for sure.
She's quote, support why they are a vulnerable population, why kids are a vulnerable population in our epidemiological description. And the nature of the vulnerable population leads to an increase of smoking initiation. Why? So we have to somehow add somewhere. But I kind of felt like I did that at the beginning when I talked about the psychological development.
Maybe you could put another piece in there for the epidemiology. Just reiterate your same point. I mean, is that okay?
I think so.
This is also technical for 2-hour class.
Yeah.
Do we have what? Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm gonna pull up the grading rubric because I feel like everything.
Yeah, I have.
It doesn't matter if it has to follow the grading rubric exactly.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting, like the 2 classes I've taken in the DMP, the grading's much different. They just say, yes, you did this, yes, you did this. There's no good job. You know what I mean? Like it's very, you met this, you met this, you met this, A, or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Like, I feel in the masters, it was a little more like, oh, you did a good job with this and this. Like, it was a little more personal grading approach. I like that. Made me feel better about myself.
Pat on the back.
Yeah. I need the pat.
I
Says more
know.
about me, though.
There's nothing wrong with that. A little bit of positive reinforcement.
So the rubric I have is
Mhm.
it's only worth 25 points. Is that right?
This whole thing?
Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
printed
And
it out, but that seems
this-
weird.
the
Because it's
packet
divided
was
into
30,
issue,
right?
epidemiology, solutions, players, and then the conclusion. So that's
Mhm.
not really going to be slide by slide.
No. Okay, so under issue, analysis of a problem explains why this is a problem of social justice, explicitly and reasonably drawing on concepts presented in the social justice textbook and the social justice unit. Gives an example for each point made. Observe slide limit. So right there, she's saying it's got to be from the social justice textbook itself and from the unit. So I think a days model is part of the vulnerability part. That's from the unit itself. And then from the textbook, we have to find something to support why this is an issue.
Right. I'm trying to figure out how to do that because I mean, if we all have 2 chapters, and if we could all pull a little bit from each one of our chapters, I guess it doesn't have to be just pick 1 or 2 chapters. I mean, she did say pick 1 or 2 chapters, but how do you do that when we all have read something different? Because, like, my first quote, the nurse finds herself not only concerned with the care of the individual, but with the health of a people. I was saying our children as a vulnerable population deserve to be protected and shown. I have to come up with something else because it was still talking about the impermeable boundaries that they can have confidence in once again. And in doing that, we have to make sure that what they're seeing isn't just big tobacco, that we do have education in the schools, that we do show the true side of what tobacco does.
Mm-hmm.
And then the professions have an obligation which goes beyond accepting the current state of affairs to shaping the reality of the future. The tobacco marketers are infiltrating nice neighborhoods and walled communities and spreading their venom at virtually every checkout counter in America. Might be a little too strong, but it came to my mind. This vulnerable population is extremely influenced by what they see, and the dangers of their choices are not obvious to their immature minds. But does all that still go up to the vulnerable population instead of like a theoretical framework? You know, does it need to be more concrete than my 2 chapters were?
Not necessarily, because I feel like when she talks about the readings, she talks about how it's a very like doctoral level thinking. So it's not going to be always very concrete. Like that's kind of, I think, it's your, as you read and your interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's kind of going to have a different interpretation. Nobody, you know what I mean? Like, I think that is kind of the nice thing about the reading is that you can kind of take different things away from it.
Yeah.
And then the not only are we healers quote, I said we can stand united and insist on changes that will protect this vulnerable population. They are not, let me find my page, just an arbitrary group of individuals that we're protecting. These are our children. We have a vested interest because they are the face of our future. But is that really, I mean, is it just still more warm fuzzy? I'm real good with the warm fuzzies, but it's not concrete. You know, if she looks through the rubric, is she going to say, well, where in the heck is the, the true backbone? Is it all subjective, I guess, is what I'm saying. If it's too subjective.
All theory is subjective. I mean,
Absolutely.
None of it's concrete. That's the problem. I have such an issue with trying to remember what the crap's about.
Right.
It's because it's not concrete and I can't get it straight in my head. That's why I struggle with all this stuff. I think it's great. I mean, I think we're making it harder than we have to make it. That's what I think.
I bet you are completely right on that.
Well, I don't know, because we got points taken off because our letter had our names on the second page. I thought that was kind of mean.
Listen,
Ladies, we did well.
at 0.6 of a tenth of a point, I could care less.
I just thought I got my 2 discussion points. I was like,
I know,
no.
me too.
Oh my gosh, when she ever was like, I don't see any discussion stuff, I was like, open your eyes. I see it all. I put it in there.
There's
And I'm like furiously emailing her all of the stuff. Like,
I was like, Kristen, please.
I know. That's
and she was like, I've never seen that part of Canvas. I was like, okay.
what was she like? What was so surprising to her about the way that we're communicating? Like, I don't get it.
So I think because I talked at one of the BBBs, sort of, I was asking the question about how does she want us to split this up? And I was like, and she was like, well, a lot of groups, will just like divide it up. And I want to make sure that it's divided, so that everybody's participating. And I was like, but that's already what we're doing. Like, we're not like, you just do this and we won't talk about it. And then we're like going to sandwich them all together. I'm like, well, that's not how our group has worked here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
no, it's no man is an island in our group. So
no. So
Thankfully.
I know, seriously. So I was sort of saying that to her and she's like, oh, you're the dream group. And I was like, I thought that's how we work together in a doctoral program. Like, yeah. I'm like there's no, you do this and we'll never discuss it, or we won't do anything about it. It's collaborative.
I mean, that's like writing certain paragraphs of a paper and putting it together. I mean, it just wouldn't even make sense.
No.
So
the fall term, actually, one of the people that's in this class I was with in the fall term, and we had a couple people drop out of that class. And like the day of the presentation, this person contacted me and basically told me I was going to do this, this, and this, which was the majority of the project, because she had already done part of it and she wasn't going to do anything else. And I had to do all the emailing, the summary, and all this other stuff. And I was so mad. I was boiling. I mean, I was like literally boiling. And when the assignments came out, I'm like, thank God that person is not in my group, because it was just, I was doing the whole work and I just did it just to get through it and get the grade,
Mm-hmm.
But y'all have been great.
Yeah. I had one in the master's I did the entire thing. She's like, I am so busy. I have this. Yeah, so am I. I mean, who's not busy? And she's like, it was like to the last minute. And I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I already did it. Sign your name on it. And we got an A, but she didn't do anything at all.
Yeah.
But that was okay.
I know.
This is a great group.
Yeah.
Did y'all see in this thing that we have to use something from the textbook?
Well, what does she mean by textbook? She means the as
book
practice.
She says,
the nurse practice.
It says find theoretical support for your argument by drawing from at least one chapter of the Kagan, Chin, and Smith textbook.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, that's what all my quotes are from.
So,
there's
I don't know. I just, it's all theory. You could make any of these work for our things if you twisted them hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we want one world free of smoking. Well, that fits into the Cosmos, chapter 4. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It's fantastic. It really is. Do you think that she is... So is it just one chapter that we're weaving throughout, or all? I guess we've asked that question 3 or 4 times here, and none of us are clear.
Find theoretical support for your argument by drawing from at least one chapter. Let's just find one argument and stick with it.
Keep it simple.
Yep.
Keep it simple. I think Tamara's got a good role. I think we should just let her roll. If she's a good BSer, let's let her BS the role.
I don't know.
Oh.
What can I say? I was the one who like put out the paper that's like, oh, parents mean nothing.
Well, that's not exactly what it said, but
I know. I'm just my little Miss Controversy over here. Okay, so I do agree that keeping it on the simpler side is probably in our best interest here.
Like for the epidemiology, it says presents completely epidemiology of the health issue and well relates it to social justice. So with our epidemiology, I started putting things on there, but obviously they can all change. I was just talking about cigarette smoking causes death pretty much. And then our specific one would be the second one, where we're saying it causes death in kids. And because they are a vulnerable population, they do have higher initiating of smoking at their age than older people.
Or
but do we have to say why is that? Do we have to find some kind of proof? Well, that's because of marketing, or does marketing not even matter?
It's because they're vulnerable.
Yeah, I think just from the research I did for my policy paper, there's not a lot of specific data that says this directly correlates to this, because there's just been so much done that doesn't even have like a solid focus, that there is no direct correlation between the plain packaging helping the smoking cessation. Same thing with, we don't know. I can't.
Well, what about that Australia study?
Right.
Didn't they say that it proved that it made a difference?
It said that it helped, but they don't know specifically because so many initiatives came out near the same time. So
that you can't pinpoint.
That you can't say, yes, it exactly correlates to decreasing. It says just kind of the same thing in America. I mean, we've had so many different initiatives rolling out as far as, suing tobacco companies and the Surgeon General reports about that it causes cancer, that we've had so many things that there aren't enough studies that say this directly correlates to this. Everything helps. We know that everything helps, but nothing, you can't come back and say, yeah, we're going to put all our funding on this because we know that helps.
Well, Sonia has. The education in schools has been shown to reduce teenage smoking compared to non-smoking schools. So the education part has something to back it.
Right. I just went with the plain packaging part.
Yeah.
So,
but that one study though on the Australian piece did actually have a direct citation about it, and I'm trying to find it because I looked at it last night because I was trying to actually pin it down, and I did find something about it.
So I have, let's see, I have my paper here. It said it showed a correlation between the decreasing in tobacco sales and plain packaging. But then it went back to, it was difficult to measure the direct impact of the tobacco labeling.
Or was it because they put so many taxes on it, it made it prohibitive because of the cost?
Yeah. I mean, that's the way I read the article, was that it was good, but we really can't say that this is the only reason why this improved. I think we can cite it as saying that an Australian study suggested this, but, and she said to talk about whether your evidence was strong or your evidence was weak. And so we can call that weak evidence, because it really is not
huge.
Yeah, exactly. The effect is not founded. So I think we can call that weak evidence, and then something else
Like maybe the education would be a stronger
evidence. And so, because I know she likes, when you just say there is weak evidence that there is strong evidence that like, she likes that simple sentence structure.
Right. Now I have a question. I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I haven't done much on the Milstead process because I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do 2 separate processes for each solution. And I also wasn't sure if I've already done a full Milstead process for the actual plain packaging bill. So do you want me to just put that information for that Milstead process and then do a separate one, kind of what it would look like if we actually pushed through tobacco education in schools?
Would it be a Milstead process that sort of combines the two of them, where we look at, say, agenda setting, this is the issue that's on the table, who are the players? Well, we would want to engage, am I forgetting the Milstead process already?
I never did understand that.
So there's the agenda setting, which is actually who is presenting the bill. Who is bringing this forward to the committee? And for example, in the FDA 1256 or whatever the bill was that I covered, I can't even remember the numbers, but
1256.
There was actually like a specific senator that brought it forward, and there were multiple co-signers and co-supporters, and then they had all these organizations that had provided their support as well. So that's all in the agenda setting. And then the government response, well, for the plain packaging, we already know that it was executive. It went through all the certain, chambers or, different departments, and it was signed by the president. And then I talked about all the implementation. Now in the education, you would have to, that's why I think would have to be separate, is because that would be a totally separate bill. And they would have to decide if this is going to be a federal initiative or if it's going to be a statewide initiative, and how you're going to implement that if it is passed, and how you would measure the process measures and the outcomes measures, how you would evaluate the implementation.
But we've already decided that our scope for this is national. So,
okay. So then
we know that it's going to be national, regardless of what our solutions are. I think agenda setting, and I think this is more not specific to bills, but sort of how do we make change here?
Put pressure on.
Yeah, so it's like change can happen in the form of policies and bills, but change can also be a little bit more cloudy, as in I did this and I did that. And, like we talked to this group, we talked to that group. And so if we're saying this is the social justice issue, this is the problem, it's a problem because of this. Now, moving forward, how do we tackle it? And we say, well, we need to get these people at the table with us. And then it's national. It's something that you can't just tackle in one place. It's got to be tackled everywhere. And then you look at what's the next step in Milstead? I don't remember.
Response.
The government response. So that one's like, okay, so what's ideal? What do we want to have happen? We want to have sort of a wave of government involvement here, where everybody is saying yes, this is important. It needs to be on the agendas of, Becky DeVos, her, the Department of Education. It needs to be on the agendas of the Department of Health and Human Services, or whoever they were, or the House committee. Like, we need to, this is how we're going to move forward. How are we going to implement it? We're going to bring programs to schools that are evidence-based and look at that. We're going to ask for plain packaging. How are we going to measure if it's doing anything? We have to look at, what the smoking rates are, and or that's the outcomes measures, right?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to provide a way of how you would want to actually measure.
Yeah.
If there's any growth. I just don't know as far as, I guess I was confused, national versus statewide. I don't know how much control you can have on a federal level on what is, specifically taught in schools. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we've already seen that's the thing. If our target group is national, then we have to talk to the Department of Education. We have to get them on board. If you want to target the packaging, we have to have the tobacco companies at the table saying, okay, we'll do, or the FDA saying you have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at the Milstead for this more as, this is sort of us putting together everything we've learned. It's not about a specific bill. It's like, okay, so this is a problem. How are you actually going to change it?
How would you change it?
How would you change this? Who do you talk to? Where do you go? In a perfect world, who would be the people that you're doing? How would you measure it? And where would you go with it?
So are we still supposed to act like this other bill that the FDA regulates tobacco labeling, like that's not a thing yet? Is that what we're still supposed to be acting like? Or
I think we can say it's a thing. It's been passed, but what has been done?
It has, but I've never seen a cigarette package that looks like that before.
Exactly.
Well, it's still in process because a lot of the tobacco companies, depending on their size, didn't have to turn in their paperwork until the fall of last year.
Yeah. And so I think that
and there's still flavors out, because supposedly part of that HR 1256, wasn't it? They couldn't have any flavors. They couldn't keep the candy, cotton candy and all that. And even the menthol they were talking about having to get rid of.
Well, I know some of the newer flavors, if you were introducing newer products by a certain year, I'd have to go back and look at it. You had a longer time to submit your paperwork. So they're still processing all the paperwork that's been coming in for new products, which I would assume is more of the vaping and those types of products.
Jewels or whatever they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that, that's part of our Milstead process to say, this has been passed, but it's still a work in progress. And where do we go from here? So there may be some educational programs out there, but
to me, the Milstead
how do we build on it?
Is the overview of where we're going with the policy.
Yeah.
Where we started, where we're going, and how we end up. I mean, I don't think it has to be the solution. I just think it has to be
the plan.
The plan, yeah.
And I think that this project is supposed to be sort of taking the policy stuff, taking the social justice stuff, putting it all together. And it's supposed to be we're supposed to take this class last, which only Sonia has taken last. But it's supposed to be the culmination of our doctoral, education.
You do realize these slides are the only thing that I have left.
I know.
That's it.
I'm jealous.
It's a pain in my slide. It's a pain in my slide.
But yeah. I think it's supposed to be this whole okay, so go out into the world, go forth as doctorally prepared nurses and find the vulnerable populations and solve their problems and make policies and learn how to implement them and go cure everybody.
I think we'll be too tired. We just want to work and come home. That's it.
No, girls, we are supposed to solve the world's problems.
Okay? World health.
Obviously, y'all are not finished with your projects.
Just starting.
Yeah. Oh.
How bad was it that Kristen, my internet went out in the middle of it? Was it
No,
horrible?
it was actually
no.
amazing. It was amazing because you know what? You did not get flustered. You just kept going. You were like, I'm rolling with it. I'm going to do it. You know, you problem solved and like had yourself on a, you know,
That was horrible.
on a mobile Wi-Fi connection. But no,
She
I
had just
really,
said that she was gonna. She said, "Well, I don't think she's coming back," and then all of a sudden, we heard your voice.
exactly. It was great.
It was.
I felt
It
like
was
you,
horrible. I was so nervous.
no,
Did I sound like it? Really?
No,
no, you
Did I
didn't sound
no,
like you were nervous at all.
I felt stupid.
nope. And now it's behind you. You're done.
I know.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Jollis was kind of proud that, you know, she gets really proud of her students. I don't know if you could tell that, Tamara.
Oh, she totally does. Yeah. Clear. It was,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, I thought it was great. I didn't think it was a bad thing. I thought it was great. I thought that you handled it beautifully. I thought it was like totally real world. Like you're like, this is rural health.
I know. That's so funny. Like, of all the things that I've done at home, it was not planned, though. But hey,
Yeah.
at least you didn't have to look at me for the last half of the presentation.
Oh, quiet. It was fine.
You looked very
Oh.
cute in your dress.
Yeah, I know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was so nervous. And I don't know if you can see the room. I had about 25 people in the room.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
my
Oh,
goodness.
wow.
So it was pretty good crowd. My husband came. The
Awesome.
doctor.
Hello.
So,
I have this special
Anyway.
drink for you in there.
Neat.
All right.
All right. So
Um,
how do we wrap this baby up? How do we want to do the talking that has to be with each slide?
It's mine. I'm gonna share it with you.
I
Are
forgot
we
about talking.
actually presenting live or is it recorded?
Yes. I think it's live, isn't it? Because two of us present on the same night, us and somebody else on Sunday evening. Are
Can
they?
we just
Yeah, together.
each do our own part?
Which
You're
is,
not like that.
Yeah. How are you going to divide that one?
how do we divide that? I know.
Like it.
Okay.
I mean, you could just everybody take 2 or 3 slides.
Wait, what?
I mean, I think that's,
I don't think we need 3 of the epidemiological description.
oh, no. No, I don't think so
So,
either.
I mean, I put all the slides in there thinking we'll just delete them as we go.
Yep.
I'm
Next
taking
time
that one
you
out.
say,
Yeah.
so
I
it says
think,
okay,
and I'll be honest, I need a little bit more time to sort of wrap my mind around all of this, process it, and
So are we going to go with Tamara's theory?
Yeah.
yep.
Well, do I really have much of a theory?
Oh, girl.
I mean, I can say what I
all day long.
I can say what I said, but it's not. Analysis of problem explains why this is a problem of social justice. I think we can figure that one out. I could do that one with the A-Day model and say this is a social justice issue, explicitly and reasonably drawing on concepts presented. Okay, whatever.
And that is using from the actual module. So check,
Correct.
we've done something from the module.
Right. Yes. And then epidemiology, complete epidemiology of the health issue.
This doesn't have to be supported by the module. This is supported by outside stuff. So, correct?
Right. And that would be us proving that kids really, the vulnerable population does truly have higher rates of smoking than older people, or at least initiation. They might quit when they're 18 if they're lucky, but we don't care about that. We're talking about the initiation. So I think we have that, at least in statistics.
Yeah.
And then solutions, reviews of potential solutions. We have two potential solutions that work together, including appropriate evidence and theory to support them.
I wonder if we need to have more theory from the book to support these. And I wonder if we need to take things like, and again, I need to wrap my mind around it a little bit more, but I wonder if we need to have like sort of this is the place where we got this theory from type thing. Like, for instance, looking at the idea of the Trojan horse, the packaging being the Trojan horse, that's bringing this in, is with the education, looking at
making the kids more aware that this is.
And we can say that, education, looking at how nurses need to become more community involved, less out of the acute place and into, so this is a place for nursing to do education, not just administrators, like school administrators.
The only problem is you'd have to be a peds nurse. I mean, I don't see anybody under 50.
Or a school nurse.
Or school nurse. Or family. You could be family. I mean, in reality, though, we're talking about nursing, the nursing profession as a whole, not just nurse practitioners. So all of us hold an RN, and this is a place where RN level education would be, maybe the NPs or the doctorally prepared nurses are driving the ship here, but someone who holds an RN can educate, should be holding this educator role. And when we take our NCLEX, we have to be able to see everybody. Not that we always want to see everybody. I like being a women's health nurse practitioner, just saying.
Yeah. So add that to the solutions page then?
So I think that we need to specifically draw on something from the textbook when we're talking about the solutions, like a theory that, like, the solutions need to be theory driven. They need to be evidence driven, which we have good evidence there. They need to also be theory driven. So coming from the book.
I guess that's what I don't understand is, like, the plain packaging, that whole thing is developed on that theory of social determinants of health. Like everything I wrote there.
Yes. But the education we need to put in something else, I think, right?
Right. But you, like, I mean, I don't think we need something to add to the book, to add something from the book to that one, do you? The first one. The plain packaging.
I don't think so. I think as long as we have something from the book for the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be based on social determinants of health theory?
Yes. Which is in the corner.
What now?
Good call. I think that being based on the social determinants of health theory is fine, but then the second solution, we need to find something from the book to say this is.
So do you want to do like the Trojan horse thing? I mean,
we're arming our kids against the Trojan horse by educating them.
Well, except the point of the Trojan horse is, I mean, they welcomed it. The Greeks gave it to them. They welcomed it in, but once it got there, they realized, the bad guys are in there.
Yeah. Well, then so fighting against the Trojan horse.
Yeah, it's about being blinded to the marketing and not realizing that those are the bad guys. The bad guys are in there.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bad guys meaning the marketers, but the tobacco itself is a killer. And You know, they welcome it in with open arms and then cry about it when they have COPD at 40.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, do we look at the instituting tobacco education in schools nationally, look at that from the perspective of addressing the structural, because one of my chapters was all about structural inequities and looking at, you know, if we're going through the schools, then we're looking at how the school structure is different than structures that that adults live in, and how that we have, I don't know, we can't make a school like a workplace. It's different. Sorry. I'm trying to talk. So one of the principles in chapter 19 was saying that you commit to equity by offering all persons unconditional positive regard. So you start from the perspective of not saying that, well, you're teenagers, you can't learn this, or you're going to make the wrong decisions. You start from this perspective of saying, like, I regard your mind as being like, I see your autonomy. I see your mind. I know that we can, you know,
with the right tools to make the right choice.
You'll make the right choice. And then it goes on to say, sort of analyzing how the structure around them can be adjusted so that they can. So how do we look at their structures, their peer groups? How do we look at, we structure our education to be able, I mean, we look at our education and structure it through trying to get at the things that make them them. So committing to them with positive regard. Locating their vulnerability and their risks, analyzing how the vulnerability is affecting their risk, balanced analysis of vulnerability. I am reading all of this and it almost doesn't make sense anymore. Ensuring practices are appropriate for those who are most vulnerable. So we can say that that's sort of the theory that we'll base this educational program on is promoting social justice through addressing structural inequities.
So add that to the solution?
Wonderful.
Yeah, I can. I'm just going to throw something in here for right now, and then I'll go back and do it when I can speak English again.
So these are my puppies. They say hello.
Aww.
They've been very patient, but they're getting to where there's another one.
Aww.
They're cute.
Sorry.
Okay, and then the players on the rubric. I guess that's our winners and losers. Who bears the cost, gains from the problem, and bears the cost of the solution? What do you think of those two slides? Who gains from the problem, who loses from the problem, and then who bears the cost of the solution?
Is it the solution? Because I'm
in California, where education in the classroom it's been paid for by the California. Yeah, I think that's what it means. Yeah, and bears the cost of the solution is what the rubric says.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what you
then
have.
I kind of strayed from that then.
And even if the citizens bear the burden of health-related costs.
So yeah, I was thinking about bears the cost like of everything, but I was doing this last night long after I should have went to bed. So I can redo that.
Well, I think that just goes to show that if we put in a little bit of money at the front end, you're not going to have all this cost at the end, hopefully. I mean, obviously, it's probably realistically going to take a long time to flip, but in a perfect world,
Yeah, I didn't know if you've seen that last bulletin point there.
Makes the argument they'll be cheaper and sell more null and void. That one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before that, tobacco companies claimed that tobacco prices dropped with plain packaging. But in Australia, they actually rose the first year higher than the rate of inflation. I found that article.
So,
because the part of the argument is that if they go to plain packaging, that they can sell them cheaper and people will be able to afford them, because the branding, they save money on branding, so they can sell them cheaper. But actually, that's not true, because they sold and kept Australia at more than inflation, the rate of inflation for that year. Which doesn't go there. I see that now, but like I said, I was tired when I was doing this. So
my battery is about to die, so if I lose you for a second, that's what's happening. Plug in real quick.
Well, I think the cost of lives probably doesn't go on that one, and that's under epidemiology.
Oh, yes, that's definitely
yeah.
Copy. I mean, it's duplicate. But it does say and bears the cost of the solution, which your first one's right. California has to pay for the schools to educate. And tobacco companies, I guess, they'll bear some of the cost if it no longer sells. Yeah. If they actually lose customers, which I won't shed a tear over that, but
in a world where we have to think about everybody's equity, then I guess we have to care about the tobacco company too.
Do we?
Well, then I can grow some corn and some soybeans.
I know. Grow something else.
They'll get creative. They'll come up with something else.
Yeah.
You know what it's going to be now? It's going to be marijuana.
I'd rather have marijuana than cigarettes, though, if I have to pick.
Not me. I don't want either.
Oh, boy. Okay. So,
and then the conclusion analysis of the solution includes completely all the following costs and benefits the solution would incur and who would bear them. But we just said that under the players. Policy changes in the Milstead, that obviously goes there.
And that's, again, that like pie in the sky magic. How do we heal the world and make it a better place?
But Rachel, you're filling all that in, right? That's your...
Yeah.
And then how would you approach developing and implementing this policy? That goes with that. So from here on out, what do we need to do?
Okay. So I need to, I just need a little bit of time myself to sit down in a quiet room and be able to focus. I don't know if anyone else feels that way.
Every day.
Every day of my life. So I think that I need to definitely work through some of the theoretical stuff for the policy solutions, and I want to look at these winners and losers again, because I feel like I think they're good. I just am like,
I'll
Did
work
we
on
answer
some
the
of the.
question?
I'll work on who bears the cost because I wasn't really like focusing on the rubric when I answered that. I was just thinking about everybody, like, in general, not the solution. So I'll fix that. I'll work on that.
That first one of who gains, I guess that's kind of in a weird spot. I meant in 2016, tobacco companies spent $9.5 billion marketing cigarette and smokeless tobacco. Not that that was a bad thing, because their revenue was so much higher that it was actually worth it to them to spend $1 million an hour marketing
Wow.
their tobacco products. But it sounds kind of weird where it's at. It makes it sound like that's a loss for them when actually they sold 249 billion cigarettes in the United States in 2017. And then you add the average retail price of a pack of cigarettes is anywhere from $5 to $10. They definitely made back their 9.5 billion plus.
I may have some information I can pull as far as more of who loses, because actually it's not just everybody who's sick. It's all these companies, because there's a lot of lost time for people who are having to get off work, because of the disease and everything that's associated with it. So
I actually have that in the page. That was in the letter.
Okay.
156 billion in lost productivity.
Yeah.
156.
That's CDC
billion.
2018.
Yeah. So I have recent projections show by 2030 we'll have 275 billion in lost productivity.
Okay, say that again.
I can send you the stat if you want. It's but it's by 2030 the annual costs related to lost productivity will reach 275 billion, and the costs related to cardiovascular disease will reach more than 818 billion. Okay. So that's just kind of showing the projections. But I can.
Yeah, send that or add that on there.
Yeah. And I'll get the Milstead stuff done. It'll be this weekend, but I will get that filled out.
Yeah, I will definitely be spending a lot more time on this weekend. I live from one weekend to the next weekend right now, as far as schoolwork goes.
Yep. Me too. But this is next Sunday, a week from Sunday, right?
A week from Sunday.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we can
time. I mean, I think we're doing good.
Yeah. I feel like if we can nail down the PowerPoint, then we can start working on what are we going to say.
And then you want to get together again and just kind of read over what we have so that we know what it's going to sound like before we actually are there to do it.
I think a dress rehearsal is always a good idea.
We could almost do something where we kind of decide who's going to cover what, and then we like go ahead and I like to write out a script because I get nervous and I don't know what to say. And then that way when we run through it, if it, I hope we don't have to practice it 3 times because that would be a lot of time. But that way.
No.
You know what I mean? In case it is 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah. I think that a run through of some sort makes sense, even if it's,
But I would almost myself prefer to do that closer to when it's actually time for the presentation.
So we're presenting on the 16th.
I thought it was Sunday the 17th.
No, the 17th. It's the 17th. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it's the 17th.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to do another Thursday evening on the 14th?
That's okay with
I
me.
think I'm fine. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Fine with me.
I can do it too.
You want to
Okay.
do a little bit earlier? I've been up since 4:50.
Oh
I'm
my.
ready to go to
gosh.
bed.
I can do it at 6:30. I know it's only an hour earlier, but
Is that okay with everybody? Or do you get home on time?
I can make it. I can make it work.
Or 7, split the difference?
I can make it work. It's fine. This is the home stretch.
Yep, 6:30 is fine. I'll make it
6:30
work.
is fine
30 on the 14th.
on the 14th.
okay.
Yep.
Put it in my calendar so I don't forget.
And I think if we're like ready to sort of run through it, then that's,
It'll be quick.
we can make the best of that, use of that time, and then have a list of things that we need to edit, and or say like, ooh, gee, let's look at that one piece again. But I think that will be good. We'll be ready. It's only 20 points or 25 points.
It's a lot of work for 25 points.
I know.
Y'all shouldn't have told me this was only 2 credit hour class, because now I'm like, oh.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Totally feeling that way.
Yeah. I'm over it.
All right.
Everybody feel okay?
Yeah. I'm going to turn into a pumpkin.
I'm ready to go to bed.
Me too.
Me too.
All right, girls.
Alrighty. Well, then I will see y'all Thursday at
See you
6:30.
Thursday. All right.
Have a
Thank
good week,
y'all.
guys.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.